Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Sunday's rendition of Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox. I am so honored to have each and every one of you join us tonight because as this election cycle begins to take place and get on its way, we are having our candidate series uh, going on. And as usual, we have a lot of candidates to get through the next 2 weeks. And tonight is not any different. We have candidate tonight. We actually have incumbent Superior Court Judge Nancy Bills on the show tonight. And we're going to go ahead and not waste any time. And we're going to go ahead and let Nancy in on the show. Good evening, Judge Bills. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, Larry. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. It is an honor to have you on. And I want to first do one thing before I ask you to introduce yourself and tell them why you're here. So I want to say hello to some people in the room. So good evening, Sherry Thomas. Thanks for joining us. And I seen Sherry at the Taste of Spring yesterday when my wife and I were there, and it was great to see you, Sherry. And you told me you were going to see me at the next Board of Education meeting, and I look forward to seeing you there. Charlotte Gellert, thank you for joining us tonight, Charlotte. Marie Withers, thank you for joining us tonight. Marie Lee Wright, thank you for joining us. Cheryl Moulton, thank you for joining. Mary Boysworth, thanks for joining. Mary, I saw you at the Taste of Spring yesterday also, and it was good to see you in person again as also. So, guys, you know how we do this. Share, like the show, so we can build the audience for Judge Bill so she can share this video with others after it's over. So we want all the candidates to be able to have a good audience, and we want them to be able to share this video as part of their campaign because it's available to all of them. Just to snatch off of Facebook, share it to their people, and use as they wish. So I like to thank you guys for joining, and again, share and like so your candidate gets the audience they deserve. So Judge Bills, if you would take it now, tell them who you are and what you're doing.
All right. Thank you, Larry. So I am Nancy Bills. I'm your Chief Superior Court Judge, and I'm running for re-election. Our election is on May the 19th, and I would appreciate your vote on May the 19th. Early voting started last Monday.
And it's went every day this week.
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has. A couple of my colleagues on the school board are running for re-election, and I went out today and helped them campaign for a few hours. So I was out there showing my support for Sandra Jackson Lett and Janie Jones. So they were out there, and I was out there waving and holding signs with them. So
it's been really nice weather to do that too.
It has been good weather to do all that with. So Judge Bills, I like to talk to people when I get on the show and whenever we're talking to candidates, and I usually have something in common with most of the candidates that are running for office in Rockdale County. Most of us didn't originally come from Rockdale County. We came from somewhere else. Where we all moved here and made Rockdale County our homes. And I did that in 2005. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your early life? Where were you? Where were you born, and where did you grow up in your early life?
Okay. So my family is originally from Georgia, but my dad was in the Air Force. So I was actually born in Tucson, Arizona. And then it took us until my sophomore year in high school to get back to Georgia. And at the time we moved to Alpharetta, Georgia, and that's where my parents still live. So I graduated from Milton High School in 1982. Then I went to UGA for college and graduated in 1986. Then I stayed at UGA and went to law school. So I'm a double dog. I'm a huge Georgia fan. My whole family is. And then my first job after passing the bar in that summer of '89, my first job was as an assistant district attorney in Rockdale County.
So you grew. How many places did you live until you were a sophomore in high school, Judge Bills? Moving around as a military brat.
Well, so my father he didn't stay in the military that entire time, but he was in sales. So we went from Arizona to Texas, We lived two different places in Texas. Then we moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and then we moved to Alpharetta.
So you just made your move this slowly but surely, heading back to Georgia. So
Yes.
that's the story of a lot of people, right? So they were born somewhere else, and then they made that movement to come to Georgia, and then you graduated high school here, and then you went to Georgia, and then Georgia Law School. So
Right.
was it always something that you, when you were growing up, when did you decide you wanted to become a lawyer?
Well, as long as I can remember, I don't really know when that happened. And I specifically wanted to be a prosecutor because I always wanted to help people. And criminal law is so interesting. That's always been my first interest. So I, made good grades, studied, went to undergrad, majored in political science, and knew I wanted to be a lawyer and knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. So I focused on that in law school as well. They have all sorts of clinics and things in law school. So my third year of law school, I really didn't have very many classes. We were actually allowed to take the bar exam during our third year. So we studied for the bar exam my third year, and we took it in February. And at the same time, we weren't really taking a bunch of classes. I was in the prosecutorial clinic. So we actually got to go and practice under the Third Year Practice Act. So I got to prosecute cases, and I was an intern in Gwinnett County. But when it came time to get a job, they didn't have any openings. And that was at a time when you had to pass the bar before you could get a job. Nowadays, there's a Second Year Practice Act that gives students more opportunities, and you can actually get hired before you pass the bar. But back in '89, you couldn't do that. So Gwinnett County didn't have any openings, but the intern coordinator, who later became the district attorney in Gwinnett, Danny Porter, he had a good friend, Robert Mumford, in Rockdale. So he sent me over to Rockdale County to interview with Robert Mumford, who, of course, later became our chief Superior Court judge.
He became Judge Mumford.
Right. But he was the first DA when our circuit broke off from Stone Mountain. So that was my first job. He was my first boss.
So, and that was in 1989. You came to Rockdale,
right?
So Judge Beals, how long were you a prosecutor from 1989 till when?
I was a prosecutor over 10 years until at the late 1999, and then I went out into private practice.
So you did 10 years as a prosecutor,
right?
And then that's, to me, that's enough to get your experience, and you know what prosecuting is like. So then you went into private practice, right? So tell us what that looked like, and that would have been from 1999 at some point until you did run for the judgeship. But what did that private practice look like? What kind of cases did you do it when you were in private practice, and how did that experience prepare you?
Well, so private practice in 1999 in Rockdale County, there were not a lot of women in private practice, and there were specifically not a lot of women attorneys practicing family law. And so I kind of got recruited out of the DA's office, because once you've established yourself as a trial lawyer, you can really do any kind of law. I mean, that's prosecution, defense, contracts, any kind of litigation. You're prepared for that. So I did criminal defense and I did family law. So you can have a divorce jury trial, you can have an adoption, a divorce, legitimation. All of those things are usually bench trials, but they're still trials. So I had jury trials as a prosecutor, I had jury trials as a defense attorney, and then I had a lot of court experience as a family law attorney.
So you've had this 10 years of prosecutor experience. And then you ran for judge when?
Well, the elections were
elected?
that summer that year. It was the summer of 2004. So the primary was actually in July. So I won the election in July and then took the bench January 2005 in state court.
Right. So you're looking at, you had 15 years of experience before you took the
Right.
bench. 15 years of the prosecuting experience and that. And actually, we go back a year before that because you actually were practicing and doing things that third year. So you realistically had 16 years of experience as far as a practicing attorney before you took the bench. So when you took the bench, you felt prepared, I'm sure.
Right.
So what did you find as a new judge? What did you find was you had to adjust to just starting the bench? You thought you knew everything, or you thought you knew whatever, and then what was that one thing that you felt you had to adjust to?
Well, the main thing you have to adjust to when you've been a trial attorney for that long is that you're no longer an advocate. You're the neutral, you're the referee. You know, you've been an advocate on both sides for 15 years, and then you get on the bench and you're trying to figure out, and of course we had a lot of great judges before me. So I knew what kind of judge I wanted to be. I wanted to be the kind of judge that let the lawyers try their case. Judge Vaughn was the consummate, he was the best judge ever. He would just wait on the bench and wait for objections, wait to do what he needed to do, and let the lawyers try their case. So that was the main thing that I wanted to do as a judge. But it's really hard when you've been an advocate on both sides for so long. You really just have to adjust to the role of neutral referee.
And I guess it can drive you a little crazy sometimes as you're sitting up there and you're watching both sides and you're like analyzing this and you're like, yeah, they just made a
Right.
mistake. It's like,
Right.
right. It's like, yeah, but I just gotta forget that and just move. So yeah, so you're there and you're making sure that the trial flows, right? And that justice is served by making it flow, and you're the referee also, right? Between the prosecutor and defense, you're the referee, and you decide what's fair and not, what's allowed and not allowed. Would that be correct?
Right. And we're all, all of us are lawyers, and we're required to know the law and to follow the law. But certainly during a trial, you've seen, if one lawyer thinks the other lawyer has violated a rule, they'll make an objection, then the court will hear from the other side, then the court will make a ruling. So you definitely want the trial to flow. And it's the trial judge's job, especially if you have a jury, because the jurors have taken time off out of their families, out of their jobs, out of their lives to come to the courthouse. So I view my job as, making sure that it's an efficient use of their time, making sure the lawyers know, okay, here's what time we're going to start. Here's what time we're going to break. You need your witnesses lined up. We're going to stay as long as the jury wants to stay. Those kind of things, just kind of managing everybody's expectations so that they understand it's going to be an efficient use of everybody's time.
Yeah. And when you guys are, in that, and you're doing the trial, and unforeseen things come up, then as the judge, you have to mitigate that. Would that be correct?
Right. You just,
so, and you never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
And you've got to be able to use that, I guess, that experience that you have from being a trial lawyer, being a prosecutor, as to, okay, we've got ourselves this situation. This is how we have to deal with it. So as a state court judge, and you were a state court judge for a good bit of time period, right? From 17. What were those years?
So I was a state court judge from 2005 until I was appointed to Superior Court in 2021.
Okay, and then let's because there's a difference between state court and superior court, and I would like, and a lot of times people get confused about
Right.
that, right? So I would like for you to, because you've held both positions,
Right.
right? Explain to the audience what the difference is between those two courts, and the experience that you believe that you have to make you know that that you had that transition, you did transition, and why you need to keep that position. So first of all, explain the difference between the
Right.
two
So
courts.
state court and superior court are both trial courts. They're both courts of record. State court handles misdemeanor crimes. So any crime that's punishable by 12 months in jail or less, $1,000 fine or less. There's a couple of exceptions to that are high and aggravated misdemeanors, but misdemeanor crimes and anything civil except divorce and family law. So state courts were created for people who wanted their trials, and mostly civil. So civil litigants who wanted a quick trial, so they didn't have to wait in superior court behind all of the domestic practice. Because in superior court, the priority after the crimes, which are felony crimes, the priority is all of the family law, because you're dealing with families and income and children and custody, and those kinds of cases need to get litigated quickly. So the other cases, torts and medical malpractice and other cases that are just about money, those can get pushed to the back. So state courts were created to streamline civil litigation. So any case, you can file it in superior court, but most civil litigators will file in state court if there is one, because they can get to trial a lot quicker. And so when I was in state court, I had a lot more civil jury trials than I did criminal. And now it's flipped.
And when you were there, there was only one state court position, right?
Right. I was the only state court judge the entire time I was there. And it was a busy, busy court, because we also in state court handle traffic court. A lot of counties have a separate court or a quarters court, or, they call them different things. But in Rockdale County, state court did everything. All the traffic tickets, all the bench trials, all the jury trials, all the non-traffic crimes, shopliftings, DUIs, family violence, those kinds of things.
So if you could, how many court cases do you think that was on your docket a year as a state court judge?
Oh gosh. Well, we had a workload study when we were trying to get that second position.
The second court, yeah.
Right. That took a little bit of time. But I was actually doing the work of like 1.9 judges at the time. So we were quite busy. I don't know. I don't have any idea the number of cases.
But it was a lot of cases.
It was a lot of cases.
And in Rockdale County, as long as I've lived here, I believe we've always had two superior court judges. Would that be that I can recall?
Yes. So when I first came, there was just one. It was Judge Vaughn. Because the state decides when another superior court judge is added. And I don't know what year that would have been, because we were not, like I said, I came right after we became our own circuit. We had been part of the Stone Mountain Circuit. So at some point, a second superior court was added, and that's where we've been. I think we're probably getting to the point where we're going to need a third superior court judge, because we have really gotten a lot busier than we had been in the past.
I had heard that same thing. I had heard that there was going to be some looking to see if that was something that was maybe going to happen. So I had heard that same thing. So that would, that was the next thing I was going to ask. What is the prospects of expanding the superior court in Rockdale County in the near future? And I think we've both heard sort of the same thing. That's something that might be in the near future.
Right. It's definitely a long process, and it goes through the judicial office of the courts. We just got an email, as a matter of fact, from the AOC, the Administrative Office of Courts, about doing a workload study. There's also like in our neighboring circuit, the Alcovy circuit, they've been back and forth about splitting that circuit. So there's all sorts of issues that have to go through. First, they have to go through the Judicial Council, which is part of the Administrative Office of Courts. Then it's got to be voted on. And of course, anytime you do anything in the legislature, it's also tied to the budget. So anytime you bring in a new Superior Court judge, you also have to bring in a new law clerk, a new judicial assistant, a new public defender, and a new assistant DA. So you got all those salaries, all the fringe. So the budget impact is what the legislature is going to look at once you meet your workload assessment, and that's supposed to be an objective measure. We're all measured the same way.
So, yeah, Justin Kinney put a thing up there, Nancy, and he said that last year the state courts caseload was 13,000 cases.
Yeah, I don't doubt.
And that's yeah. So I mean, that was that's just crazy. So and then Superior Court, I'm assuming your case, y'all's combined, it's something similar. It is just a crazy number.
It is a crazy number. And in Superior Court, so I don't know if I finished that analysis, but Superior Court are all the felony crimes and then anything civil, but we have exclusive jurisdiction over cases that involve equity. So divorce, land disputes, those are more and more frequent than I really would have thought. But we do a lot of family law, a lot of land disputes. We do all the appeals from the tax appeals. That has become a lot more frequent.
That's become a lot in the last 5 years.
Exactly.
The last 5 years, that's been a hot topic issue with land appeals.
Yes.
So I can see where that's increased your case.
And we also have appeals from the lower courts. So a magistrate court appeal can come to state or superior, as can a probate. So we get appeals from magistrate and probate as well. So and of course we handle child support calendars every month. So we're pretty much in court every day.
And then I think one things that people have asked about, and of course it is in Superior Court, is if there is a murder case, that's where that's tried. So,
yes.
So a lot of people have where do they try that? You or Judge Woods would hear a murder case in Rockdale
yes.
County if we would have one. That's where those are heard.
Right.
So any kind of vehicular homicide or any type of situation where a life's taken, you guys hear those cases, and that's where people say, well, where are those cases heard at?
Well, the only exception is, and these were the hardest cases in state court, the only exception to that is a misdemeanor vehicular homicide. So if you have a traffic accident that's not DUI, reckless, this doesn't have any aggravating factors. Like if you run a stop sign and the person that you hit dies, that's a misdemeanor vehicular homicide. And those are so horrible because it could happen to anybody. I mean, we've all run a stop sign not meaning to. So those cases are really awful. But most other cases that involve a death would be in Superior Court. And
that would be the exception.
Yeah.
That would be the exception, right?
Yeah. And actually, it's hard to believe this, but in Superior Court, Rockdale County, as small as we are, we actually have 13 pending murders.
It unfortunately is not surprising if we pay attention to the headlines and read what's going on. We do know that some bad things have happened in our community over the last couple of years. So let me ask you a question too, Judge Bills. How long does it usually take a murder case to work its way through the court?
Well, that depends on a lot of factors, but it generally takes probably a year, about a year, to get all the way through motions, everything that has to go into bringing a case to the grand jury. I'd say about a year.
About a
Mhm.
year. So, and you guys, uh, that's probably one of y'all's least favorite things to do is probably preside over one of those, and it's because of just the circumstances and the grief to because the family has to live that death over
Right.
when that trial comes. So I know it's a very difficult thing for everybody to do. And then you guys, I'm assuming those are you make sure all cases are you know T's crossed and I's dotted, but with those particular, I guess even more attention's paid to because you don't want appeal
Exactly.
issues.
Exactly. Yeah, as a trial judge, your main job is to make the record. I told you earlier, state and superior courts are courts of record. So one of the main jobs as the referee is to make a good record because almost every murder goes up to the Supreme Court. So everything, I mean, and you've seen a trial. Sometimes people answer without using words, but everything has to be put into the record. And of course, that's the court reporter taking down every word everybody says, every exhibit that's admitted, every motion that's, made, every ruling that's made, and just making sure that the court and the attorneys have said everything that needs to be said exactly the way it needs to be said. So that's the job.
So, John's got an interesting question, and I think I'll even know your answer before it's given. But he wants to know, in your opinion, is it more important that the expediency of the court or the rights of the accused?
Well, I think those two go hand in hand.
Okay.
Um, we're as trial judges, we want to get the cases to trial because of course if you haven't made bond and you're sitting in jail, your right to a speedy trial is very important. um, so I think it's a fine balance. We're certainly not going to rush the trial or rush anything to trial, and that's where the lawyers come in. The state has to be ready, the defense has to be ready. Sometimes cases get continued even when we don't want them to because there's an issue that would affect somebody's rights, whether it's a witness that's critical that's unavailable or some new piece of evidence that's been located and still needs to be analyzed at the crime lab. I mean, there are all sorts of things that happen that can affect when a case can be tried and how quickly it can be tried.
Have you ever had a case being dragging, and you feel that one side or the other is, maybe, dragging it a little bit, and you've had to call somebody in and say, "Hey, let's tighten up and move this on."
Yes, I mean, I think that most judges have had to do that. Um, not, we're fortunate in Rockdale County. We have really good lawyers, and it is a pleasure to try a case as a judge when you have really good lawyers. Um, you almost don't have to do anything when the lawyers are great. And so that has been my experience really on the bench. Every once in a while, you get, when you're an advocate, when you're a trial lawyer, you get in the heat of battle. So you're very adamant about your case. You're very invested in your case and your client, and you have a point you want to make. And the judge may not think it's as important a point as you think it is, but it's the court's job to listen to both sides and say, okay, well, I've heard from both of you, and here's my ruling.
Gotcha. So one of the other things that we've heard people talk about on the show are accountability courts. and the importance of these courts, and especially to people who are going through the court system, right? Because I guess when someone is going through the court system, they've had a bad day at some time,
Yeah.
right? So to get there, something's not going right in your life.
Right.
And are these accountability courts a way to minimize that in some way, Judge Bills? And tell me how they work and what the purpose of accountability courts is.
Okay. Well, the purpose is certainly what is driving accountability courts and their success. And I think the best way to tell you about that is to tell you about my experience when I came into state court. So when I came into state court, that was early 2005. It was accountability courts were very young at that stage. It was a very law and order, you did the crime, you did the time kind of mentality. But as I was as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, then when I took the bench, it became obvious that we were getting the same result. We could be tough on crime, but the person was still had the same issues when they got out. So just a DUI, I'll start with that because that was our first accountability court. If it was an alcoholic who was on their third DUI, if I gave them, or the judge before me, if any judge gave the max, which 12 months to serve, and that was it, you said, okay, you're dangerous, you're a danger to the community, I'm going to put you in jail for 12 months. That person still was an alcoholic the day you let them out after that 12 months. They hadn't gotten any help. They hadn't gotten any treatment. They had not been drinking or driving for that 12 months, but that's the longest you can hold them. And then if you haven't addressed anything that was the underlying cause for the crime, you really haven't solved anything. So that set the stage for me to think, well, this is not working. We're not making any progress whatsoever. We're not making the community any safer. We're not making people any healthier. What else can we do? So accountability courts had been around, and there was a DUI court in Athens that it was an academy court, I think they called it at the time. Later, they were called model courts, and ours became one. But we went over and we saw what they did. It's a completely different model. In most courts, courts are adversarial, right? You have a defense attorney, you have a prosecutor, or you have a plaintiff's attorney, you have a defense attorney. But in accountability courts, it's a multidisciplinary team model. You still have those parts. You have a judge, you have a prosecutor, you have a defense attorney, but you also have treatment, surveillance, law enforcement, and then we've added a bunch of other things. Peer support is really the main thing. So you incentivize somebody to come into the court by reducing the amount of jail time. So they're either coming out of jail earlier or maybe not getting the jail time that they would have normally gotten. But they're going to be in your treatment court for a minimum 12 to 18 months or 18 to 24, depending on if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. And during that entire time, when they're in your court, they're coming back to court in front of you for status hearings. They're being tested 3 to 4 times a week for drugs and alcohol and all the things that you've told them they can't do. They're in group treatment. They're in individual treatment. They're still on probation, but you're actually getting to the root of why are you drinking and driving? Why are you, it didn't have to be just DUI crimes. We had a shoplifting kid that was in our court, and he was drinking cough syrup. That was his drug of choice. But you have to get to the bottom reason. Is it, like with veterans, is it PTSD? Is it trauma? Is it abandonment? Of course, a lot of addiction is genetic. But the wonderful thing is that people can recover. People can quit drinking. They can quit taking drugs. With mental health court, it's about getting them off the street drugs, getting them onto the medication that they're supposed to be taking so that they don't commit any more crimes. So you've reduced recidivism, you've restored a person to a healthy lifetime of recovery, and hopefully you've restored them to their family and to the community. So that was the goal of accountability courts, and that's in fact what has happened with all of our accountability courts.
When in the 1990s in West Virginia, they passed some legislation, and if someone was, if they were picked up just for public intoxication, they could not go to jail. They established what they call these public inebriation centers. So if someone was picked up and the only thing they were charged for was public inebriation, right, they were sent to the public intox center. And once they were sober, then they went to the local mental health service where they went through an evaluation process. And if it was determined that they had a substance problem, their sentence was they were sentenced to counseling. So that was I think that was probably maybe some of the early things that people did back in, with that. And I remember that back in the day when I was there, and I thought that was, you know what I mean? That was very helpful for people who had substance issues, that they had that in place back then. So we had a good question from somebody a second ago, and I think people would like to hear the answer to this. What accomplishment are you most proud of during your time on the bench? And could you elaborate a little bit about it?
Okay. Well, I think the accountability courts would have to be my answer to that. The DUI court that we started in 2007 is still going, has had over 324 graduates, I think. We have a drug court, we have a mental health court, and I'm so excited that Judge McRae and I are starting a veterans court this summer, because we don't have a huge veterans population, but we have enough veterans who obviously have served our country, and we need to serve them. And when you talk about second chances, I've heard Judge McRae say it, and I love the way he talks about it. But second chance, third chance. I mean, with what some of our veterans have done for our country, I think giving them a second chance, a third chance. But it's a very specialized program for veterans, because everything they've been through is so specialized and so requires such different services. So the veterans court that we're starting under our drug court umbrella this summer is going to be, Judge McRae is going to preside over that, because he is a veteran. And veterans are very particular about, they want to be surrounded and treated by other veterans. So that model is, there'll be mentors, there'll be peer support, there'll be counseling, and they'll be hooked up with the VA, but they'll also be hooked up with general treatment like we have. But it will be so focused on their needs, their benefits. So I think those specialized programs, those are the people that, when you talk about access to justice, accountability courts are where that meets people. I mean, just talk to anybody who's gotten their back.
So, I mean, what do you, so a lot of people, what does an accountability court look like, Judge? So let's just say I'm a veteran and I get charged with something or something. So, and then you guys think that I'm a candidate for that court. What does that look like for me?
So that looks like you would enter a plea, usually. Sometimes you can do a pretrial diversion. There's a couple of different models, and we have done things both ways. So it depends on, and that's where the district attorney, as a teammate, they're kind of the legal gatekeepers. But we have a multidisciplinary team. We staff every person who might be a candidate. So anybody can self-refer, a lawyer can refer, family members have referred, probation, parole. everybody can refer a candidate to any one of our courts. So the DA does the legal analysis, because the only disqualifier that is across the board is we can't take sex offenders. So sex offenders cannot come into accountability courts. But other than that, it's almost wide open. So the team, we meet every single week. We staff anybody that wants to come in to our accountability court. And that means, do they have housing? Do they need another level of care before they come in? For instance, do they need to go to the Rockdale House for Men for in-house treatment, inpatient treatment before they come out? Because ours is outpatient. So we're court-ordered supervised treatment, but it's outpatient. So you live, you work, you go to treatment. And when you're in the early phases, once you come into the accountability court, you're going to group treatment. You may be going to individual as well. You're meeting with me, with the judge, every week in the first phase. So how are you doing? You know, are you getting adjusted to your schedule? You're calling the drug test line every night to see if you have to go give a sample. Your probation officer is coming to your house, to your job. We're all making sure that you have everything you need, because all our accountability courts are very well resourced. So we have all sorts of funding, federal funding, state funding, funding from the hospital authority, to make sure people's health, wellness, addiction, everything that goes into making that person whole again is brought to bear. But it's an 18-month minimum program. So you're seeing the judge every single week. And if you have a sanction, you get sanctioned. If you like, a sanction would be, did you miss a drug screen? Did you miss a treatment? And you could get community service. I mean, jail is the last sanction that there is in accountability courts. You're trying to modify behavior. So you're incentivizing, and you're supposed to incentivize 10 times more than you sanction. So you're rewarding people, you're praising people, you're watching their progress. I mean, some people have never completed anything in their life. And one hand clap, you know, you did a great job, we're so proud of you. You would be amazed at how many people nobody has ever said that to. So it is a transformative.
And also comes the word accountability, because as you've talked about this, Judge Beals, it looks like there's layer upon layer of accountability. And that's, I'm assuming, where the word accountability court, it comes in, right? And then also it looks like there's also layers and layers of assistance for the people that are in the system, in the process. Also, it looks like they have people that are there for them. You know, when they're having a hard time or they're struggling, it sounds like that you've got this mechanism in place to make sure that they have that support system that they need to, like you say, to finish something when some of them have never finished anything in their life. And when you finish something and you've never done that before, just that feeling of accomplishment that one gets for finishing something, you're right. It's something nobody has ever felt in their life. And that can be that changing point in their life that gives them hope and know that they can make a difference. And, you know, and for people to care enough to make a difference in their life, it gives them that feeling of hope.
It is so rewarding. But to your point, Larry, that's a very important. So it's a voluntary program. If you come into the accountability courts, you tell the court, I want your help. And we tell you, we're going to give you our help, but this is an accountability court program. The buck stops with you. A couple of things you can't do: you can't run away, and you can't lie. You have to be honest to yourself and to the drug court team. So everything else we can deal with. We know you're not going to come in that day from being an addict and immediately stay clean. So we deal with that with treatment and, you know, behavior modification. But helping somebody get clean and sober and into long-term recovery, And then you'd be amazed at how many people in our program have graduated from our program. So now they are hired. They work at the lab, they work as peer support, they work with the Stepping Up initiative. I mean, you would be amazed at how many people have come from our accountability courts and are now our employees.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think this is an interesting question here. I think we'll touch it. It says, aside from the work in the accountability courts and the positivity that comes from them, what is one change you would like to see in Rockdale County? And I'm assuming the Rockdale County judicial system. So there are always room for improvement or change that needs to happen. So Judge Beals, if reelected, what is one thing that you think you'd like to change about our current judicial model here in Rockdale County?
Well, one thing we've been working on that we haven't had before is having a mediation office in the courts. And the state office has actually come to meet with us about starting that. So I've always believed that mediation is important. It's fruitful. It helps people solve their own issues. People are much happier when they can resolve their own issues with the help of a neutral mediator. So anytime there's a case that wants a trial of any sort, and I started this in state court, I would require them to mediate. And most times the case is settled in mediation. But that was a private, like, we're going to refer you out. You all either choose your own mediator or we'll assign one. But a lot of the bigger counties have their own offices, and that would assist with making mediation affordable and available to more people. So we have actually started the process, and we've actually asked for a position to run that office. But the great thing about the mediator, the arbitration department, they call it ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. The beauty of that program is it's paid for strictly by fees, by filing fees. So it's not a taxpayer burden. It's not paid for by the county. It's paid for by filing fees. So that is one thing that I would really like to change moving forward. And we will have a judges meeting, Friday, where we'll talk to the other judges. So Judge Wood and I have met with that office from the state and are very excited about moving forward. So we'll talk to the other judges on Friday and kind of get their input.
Gotcha. I mean, that sounds, yeah, the mediation thing, I'm in the construction industry, we do contracts, and in our contracts, there's always a clause in there about mediation before a lawsuit or whatever. And there's always one portion of that we strike, Judge Beals.
What is it?
They always want to do the mediation on their home court. So we always require mediation be held in a neutral setting.
Right.
That's what we strike it out, because they always want it in their home county or home whatever. And we strike that and ask for mediation to be done in a neutral location.
Right.
So that's but because also we agree with the mediation, but we just want mediation to be done in, a neutral location.
Of course. Yeah. So that mediation is very successful. I mean, even when you don't settle the whole case, if a case has been to mediation, 9 times out of 10, the issues have been narrowed. The parties know exactly what they need to go talk about when we come to court, and it just shortens the trial and saves people money.
So, I mean, I think Justin just put something up there. He said, please help bring back the Family Law Information Center. And I think that goes right. And I think Ms. Thomas asked a question, which, I don't think we can get into answering because it's legal advice. Right. So, but I think if you bring back what Justin wants to, then Ms. Thomas and her family could go there and get that question answered at the Family Law Information Center. So
well, I don't know what Ms. Thomas asked, but I will tell Ms. Thomas, and I will, we take these.
I'll read what she asked, right?
Okay.
If a motion for contempt has already been filed for a non-payment of child support per a divorce decree, and the other party is avoiding service, what options are available to move forward with the enforcement? So it sounds like they're trying to serve the papers and the person's hiding from them.
And that's one of the biggest challenges in Superior Court is, and I understand it, lawyers are expensive. People are representing themselves more and more. But the court is ethically bound not to advocate. I cannot give legal advice, but we do have calendars where we bring people that are representing themselves into court and say, okay, so you haven't been able to serve. Here's where you can go. So to Justin's point, I would love to get that Family Law Information Center back going. But in the interim, we actually have the Georgia Legal Services Ask a Lawyer Day. So this is the law library of our county. And as the chief judge, I'm the chair of the law library. So the law library partners with the Georgia Legal Services Program. And the second Friday of every month, there is a free lawyer. And you can make an appointment and go ask the free lawyer how you can serve the other party or what your options are.
Is there a phone number they dial, Judge Beals?
There is. It is 678
Okay.
430-2805.
Okay.
And they
I've got
start
this.
taking,
And when do they start taking them?
well, they start taking calls on the Tuesday before the second Friday. And the only caveat to that is this month in May, it's not actually the second Friday, it's May the 15th.
Okay.
And it's 10 a.m. they start on that second Friday. But you have to have an appointment now. They've just changed that. And I think it's going to work a lot better.
The May
May
date
15th
is
is just this month. Then it'll go back to being the second Friday.
And
But they're an incredible group. The lawyer is great. They
so
can
it's
represent
the Tuesday
people.
before, so that would be the 12th, right? They would have to call.
Yes. Uh-huh. And that's a great, great way to get your questions answered by a lawyer without having to hire a lawyer.
So, Ms. Thomas, I put this in the chat just now. It's Ask a Lawyer Day. It's the second Friday of each month. The number is 678-430-2805. And the May the 15th is the date this month, and call on May 12th to make the appointment. And that's the number. So if you can call there, make an appointment, you guys can go meet an attorney and get a free date. So I put the number up. Sandra Jackson asked me to repeat the number. And Sandra, I put the number in the chat. It is 678-430-2805. So see, Judge Beals out here doing things. Now I'm going to mention something to you. So you and I were talking at the beginning of the show, and you said, Larry, how are we going to talk for an hour? Judge Beals, look what time it is.
Wow, we did talk, and I wouldn't let myself look at the timing because I didn't want to know, but we talked for an hour. That was awesome.
Yeah. And
thank you for the opportunity.
And it is the library, correct, is where it will be at?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. So at the Nancy Gwynn Library.
So, and Ms. Thomas said, thank you very much. So I know Ms. Thomas, she is a fantastic lady. She supported me during my run a couple of years ago, and she is a retired educator. So trust me, I have to be on my P's and Q's because Ms. Thomas knows about education. So I've got to watch what I say and how I say, because she will call me out on it. So
okay, I got you.
So, but yeah,
it's good to be accountable, right?
It is. So that's my accountability court is everybody in Rockdale County. So
right.
But it is what it is. But yeah, I want to just say thank Judge Beals for coming on the show tonight. And what we always do at the end of the show, Judge, is we give the candidate the opportunity for one last appeal, because we'll let you do your one last appeal to the voters. Then I'll say goodbye to the audience, and then if you'll hang on, then we'll exit the show, and then you'll and I'll have a brief conversation before we depart for the evening. So if you would not mind, go ahead and tell the people again why they should vote for you. Okay.
So I am asking for your vote on May the 19th. I think my experience makes me the most qualified candidate. I stand on my record. I have been in this county. I have worked hard for this county. I have good ideas of things I still want to do. I work hard on the bench. I work hard off the bench. and I will continue to work to earn your trust. So please vote for me on May 19th. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Beals. And again, guys, if you want to make sure this video gets out to as many people as possible, share and like the show. Thank you. We've got all kinds of celebrities joining. Chairperson Van Ness just joined us. If you notice, Judge Woods joined us earlier tonight also. Said, she was watching. So I just want to, thank everybody for joining tonight. And I want to thank you guys for continuing to watch the show. And it is a privilege to be able to bring candidates to the voters of Rockdale County during this cycle, because it's hard for people to actually get to hear candidates. And this is one of those rare places that they can come and watch it. And we try to give it, just an honest show where people actually just get to hear the candidates and, no pressure. So that's what I try to do. I try to make it a no pressure environment so everybody feels comfortable. So, and I hope we did make you feel comfortable tonight, Judge Beals. And
you did.
And we thank the audience for being very polite and nice tonight. And nobody had to get called out on the carpet. And so we like that. So, guys, tomorrow night we have another show. We have Heavenly Combs running for Congress, and we will have a new congressperson representing Rockdale County, because unfortunately Congressman Scott passed away, and one of those individuals running will be your next congressperson. So it's important to get to know them. We had Emmanuel Lewis on the show earlier this year, and Ms. Combs asked to come on the show, and that's all it takes, guys. Just ask. Judge Bill saw me somewhere and said, "How do I get on your show?" I said, "Well, you just did the magic thing. You just asked." And that's all it is. You just ask, and I schedule you. And even though the calendar's full, we will make a date to get somebody on the show. That's what it takes. So, guys, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Thank you for being a great audience. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 8 p.m. with Judge Combs. I mean, not Judge Combs, but Heavenly Combs on the show. So, Judge, if you'll hold on, we're going to exit and